we have seen the final and the formal step of signing of the decrees on the independence of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions. So the president has signed on these decrees. Now we are expecting the ceremony on the signing of these territories into the Russian Federation when they will be incorporated now legally. Russia says this is following the will of the people. Russia says the referenda that have been held in those territories have demonstrated this principle of self-determination of the nations, and even though there's been the widespread international condemnation, Russia says this is something enshrined in the UN Charter. So we are expecting the ceremony today. The heads of these republics and these regions have all come to Moscow, and we're also expecting the Russian lawmakers to be present. The ceremony will be taking place at the gorgeous Georgievsky Hall, which is at the Grand Kremlin Palace, and of course there will later be a concert held here around the Kremlin. There have been decorations set. There are the metal detectors, so people who are getting through those detectors, they will be getting to the concert. There will be strong police presence. But also what's important is that we will be looking at how the Russian lawmakers will be making the decisions that are related to the incorporation of these territories into the Russian Federation, because it is just not the signing of the documents. It also means many more decisions, many more budgets to be allocated to make sure that the people who live on those territories will have the adequate social support to begin with.
12 o'clock GMT tomorrow on Friday, it is widely expected that the Russian president will be making a major speech, as it has been put by the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. But also there will be the signing ceremony, which will be, of course, looking into the incorporation of these new territories into the Russian Federation. So this will be taking place at the Grand Kremlin Palace. At the same time, we have heard from some of the lawmakers that they were receiving the invitations to join this ceremony, and a large concert is now also being prepared to be held in downtown Moscow next to the Kremlin walls in order to salute these territories joining the Russian Federation. So it's not clear whether the Russian president will be joining this concert, but of course the aim here is to amass the support. Now the heads of the republics where the referendum were held, they have all appealed to the Russian president on this incorporation, and they are now in Moscow expecting the private meeting with Vladimir Putin, and the Russian lawmakers will be looking into the matters that are related to this process next week at the sessions that they will be held in, because they say they are only possible after those documents are signed.
Well, first of all, they were called, but now there is also the decision to hold those referenda in both of these republics, in Donetsk and in Luhansk. They will be held, according to the local authorities, between the 23rd and the 27th of September. That will be the mixed voting to avoid the gathering of the people at the polling stations, according to the local officials. We also understand that Kherson region will be voting, and Zaporizhzhia has said they will be voting in the coming days. So that's definitely a very clear call from these republics to what Moscow says, to define their own fate, to become the masters of their destiny. Now, as for the reaction, we have seen Russia's former president Dmitry Medvedev saying that the joining of these territories to the Russian Federation will change forever, irreversibly, the geopolitical landscape worldwide, because definitely he referred to the very fact that if these territories are within the Russian Federation, then attack against those territories will be amounting to the attack against Russia. So certainly this will be changing the disposition of powers, and then all of the forces could be used when it comes to what is seen now as the special military operation. But the Kremlin itself has not commented on that yet. We have heard Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov saying that it is the will of the people that should be heard, that the people will be defining their own destiny. But certainly he said before that the conditions have to be met, and the first and foremost here was the security situation.
The heads of these territories, some of them have already appealed to the Russian president, asking to incorporate those territories into the Russian Federation. We also understand that they will be traveling to Moscow for the meeting with the Russian president. It's not clear yet when that will happen. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that the plans of the Russian president are still being worked on. So we understand that the Kremlin will support the will of the people, as it is said in Moscow, and they will be making all all the necessary procedures within the legal framework, but very promptly. This is how it was promised to be taken care of. Now, at the same time, we also know that the State Duma is expected to vote on these territories joining the Russian Federation. But of course, Russia sees this as a completely different situation. They say they are helping the people who live in those territories to avoid genocide, as it has been put by the officials here in Moscow. And Moscow has repeatedly said that this is happening to end the sufferings of these people. Vasily Nebenzia, who represents Russia with the United Nations, went even further, saying that Kyiv has turned away from these territories. So he said that this referendum could go even further. Well, the government officials have warned from the very beginning that those protests have never been authorized, thus it was illegal to take part in them. So we have seen people being detained, we have seen this protest being dispersed, and we have seen many of the law enforcement agencies in the streets of the large cities across the country. So definitely we can see that those protests indicate that there are not only those who support what has been described as a so-called special military operation, but those who disapprove of this move, and particularly the fact that many more people will have to be drafted into the military. And certainly this is showing the split in the Russian society, which has somehow smoothened since the start of the special military operation, but is now growing once again.